And I believe that's everybody that was in the waiting room. We can get started. David.
So I think Justin's got to kick us off.
Okay, Justin.
Well, if I need to share the slides, then I need to be given permission to, or is...
No, we've got the slide shared for you. So Jess, you can pop them up now.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, I'm Mandy.
There we go. All right, welcome everybody to today's rate reform studies of long-term care services under Maine Care kickoff meeting, workgroup meeting number 1. Appreciate everyone's attendance today. Our goal today is to walk through the goals and reasons for doing this project and walk through some of the steps that we will take as we start to kick this project off. I'm not sure, was Michelle gonna give an opening statement for DHHS, or did we just want to jump into the slides?
Yep, I'm happy to say a few words. First, and this might be on your next slide, but I think it would be helpful to do some high-level introductions of a few folks. And if you're on more than one Zoom meeting with me, you know that I'm now going to be annoying and ask you to take the slides back down so that we can see each other's faces more easily while we're doing introductions. And so while that is happening, good morning, everybody. My name is Michelle Probert. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the director for the Office of Maine Care Services. I know that my little Zoom square says that I am Maine Care Services. It sometimes feels that way, but that's not true because there's a great team of folks with the office, a fair number of whom are here today. So we are not going to introduce everybody because there's a big crowd today, but I did want to call out a few folks. We have Jenny Patterson, who is our Director of Policy at Maine Care. Jenny, if you could just say hi so your screen lights up.
Yep. Hi, I'm Jenny, and I can introduce my team members who are here just by name, if that would be helpful, Michelle.
Sure, if you just want to list folks' names.
Yep, we've got Kristen Merrill, Heather Binglis, and Tom Leet from the policy team.
Thanks, Jenny. And David Jorgensen is our Director of Data Analytics and Rate Setting. David, you want to say who's on your team?
Good morning, everybody. Nice to meet you all. On the rate setting team, we have Peter Kraut, the manager of rate reform. Brian Lumbra, you've already met, is our project manager for our long-term care reform project. Jessica Levesque is another project manager in our rate reform unit, and Amanda Lee is our rate reform coordinator. And I believe that's everybody from rate setting.
Okay. Paul, would you like to introduce yourself and anyone else from ODES?
Sure. Thank you, Michelle. Paul Saucier, Director of the Office of Aging and Disability Services. We're really happy to be collaborating with OMS on this important work. I see Lauren Mikalakis, who's a clinical advisor at ODES. And I see Nicole Rooney, who many of you know, oversees our home care programs. I don't see Karen today, but she'll be involved in this work as well. And I also, while I have the floor, would like to point out Elizabeth Gatine, who is the new coordinator of the Cabinet on Aging in the governor's office. And so happy to have her here today as well.
Great, thank you, Paul. And we also have the department's Division of Audit represented. I don't see Herb, so Trisha, I think I'll look to you to say hello.
Hello, everyone. I think Herb is joining as well.
I am here. Good morning, everyone.
Herb, you're hiding from me. Good morning. All right. Anyone else from the department that we've missed that would like to introduce themselves? Okay, and I will ask that if folks could identify who they are in the chat and what organization they are with, that would be great help to us. And while folks are doing that, I just wanted to say that this feels like a momentous meeting this morning that we've been waiting for a long time. Even pre-pandemic, we have had a multitude of conversations talking about a vision for the future for long-term care, both from a perspective of what do we want services to be and look like, how is that same or different from how they look today, as well as I will have to say many, many more conversations about our current reimbursement methodology. And I think it's safe to say that there is shared frustration on all sides about our current methodology. It is very administratively burdensome. It is burdensome for all of you as providers. It is also burdensome to the state. There are some mixed incentives involved with that reimbursement methodology, and as a reimbursement that's based in cost settlement, although we are well aware that it doesn't fully reimburse for all costs, it does end up with inequities in the system in terms of providers receiving different levels of reimbursement that is not at all related to quality of care provided necessarily, and that may or may not be fair in terms of services provided and population served. So it's time for an update. And within the department, as we started having conversations about how do we really start engaging in this conversation, there was immediately recognition that there is a short-term vision and there is a longer-term vision, and we need to split those in two. For the short term, and by short term, we have the goal of implementing a new methodology for January 1, 2025. The short-term focus is really on how do we pay for care right now, and how can we end up with a reimbursement system that is equitable, that is adequate and sustainable, that does not create the same level of administrative burden, and that also provides incentives as well as rewards for provision of high quality care. So that is our near-term goal. In recognition of the broader goal, part of the work we're kicking off today is to really start a collaborative conversation about our system for long-term services and supports as a whole, and assessing the needs in the state of Maine for that system, as well as looking nationally at other service models, as well as payment models. And that work where we're really diving into what does care look like and what do needs look like in the state of Maine, as well as what are national models, that work will inform a longer term vision. And the longer term vision may be that we think our service models are appropriate with a few tweaks here and there, but we're also leaving the conversation open for true collaboration so that we can think big and determine together whether there are larger changes that we want to create as a system. So short term as well as long term, the work that we're kicking off today, again, is partly focused on that shorter term reimbursement methodology changes, but then doing needs assessment work and a scan of best practices to set the stage for potential broader change as well. All right. And so with that, I will turn it back to, not sure who I'm turning it back to, but I also just would be remiss not to note that all of your time is very important. I'm sure you have other things that you would otherwise be doing at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, and just want to recognize the absolutely critical nature of the services that you provide, and acknowledge that long-term care facilities in particular have had a really rough go of it the past number of years, and you all have been right on the front lines trying to get us through the pandemic and provide quality care for your residents. So we see you, we appreciate you. We know it's been tough, although we have not experienced the day-to-day that you all have. But thank you, and we're hoping that these conversations, while they will take time, will be to all of our benefit moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle. And we'll hand it back over to Justin and Mandy. You could share the slides again. Thank you.
There we go. All right, Mandy, if you could go to the next slide, please. We did want to remind everybody that this public listening session is being recorded and made publicly available. So just want to put the disclosure out there up front in case folks are not comfortable speaking when being recorded or have other issues. Just want to make sure everyone is aware that this is a recorded meeting. Next slide, please. All right, and today we're going to go through the agenda topics that we want to cover. And we're going to start with introductions, which we've already done for DHHS, but we will do a quick introduction to the Guidehouse team as well. We're going to go through the objective and study objectives. We're going to go through the National Long-Term Care Program scan that we're going to be engaged in. We're going to cover the Maine long-term services and supports mapping and needs assessment that we're going to engage in. We'll go through the high-level timelines of what to expect over the next several months. And then we'll open it up for questions and comments at the end. But we do encourage you, if you do have questions along the way, please feel free to jump in and ask, or if you'd rather use the chat, you can submit questions through the chat as well, however you're more comfortable, but we're glad to take questions throughout the day. Next slide. All right, we did DHHS already, but I did want to introduce the Guidehouse team that's been engaged to assist with this work. Given that it's a wide array of different topics that we're covering, we brought in a wide knowledge base of team members to help out with this. So if everyone from Guidehouse can just do a quick introduction, I'll start. My name is Justin Rudder. I'm located in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I will be the overall project manager for this project. And historically, I have a basis in more of rate setting and actuarial rate setting activities. Tamara?
Good morning, everyone. Tamara Porter. I lead Guidehouse's state healthcare practice. The background in working with state programs for a little over 20 years now, and very excited to be a part of this transformation here in Maine.
Thank you, Tamara. David?
Good morning, all. My name is David Garbarino. I'm a director here at Guidehouse and will be the overall engagement director for this project. I've been in the healthcare reimbursement field for close to 30 years with a specialty in strategic planning and facility reimbursement.
Thank you, David. Josh Mim?
Yep, I'm Josh Mim. Like Justin, primarily a rate setter, so I'll be leading the rate setting portion of this. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Josh. Linda?
Hi, Linda Wegerson, come with about 30 years of experience, clinical as well as revenue integrity, and nice to be here.
Thanks, Linda. I'm not sure if Sean Clare, are you on?
I am.
Well,
I'm a senior consultant based out of the Atlanta, Georgia area, and I'll be working with Josh on rate development.
Great. Sharon?
Good morning. I'm a director here at Guidehouse, and my subject matter expertise is in long-term care, skilled nursing specifically, as well as home health and assisted living. And I've had the pleasure of creating and developing value-based programs between skilled nursing and state plans, and have a strong passion of 20 years in skilled nursing. So I am very excited to see where Maine is moving.
Great, thank you, Sharon. Chelsea?
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Chelsea Mahoney, clinical background in nursing and quality and risk, and I will be supporting as the technical lead with this engagement. So thank you and looking forward to working with y'all.
Thank you. Karen?
Morning, everybody. My name is Karen O'Driscoll. I'm an associate director at Guidehouse. And I will be acting as a SME supporting Linda Wegerson on the project. My background is in skilled nursing facilities, doing business development, strategic planning, also worked with Sharon Fisher on some of the state value-based programs for skilled nursing facilities, also involved on the analytics side of it, and have worked with ACOs and health systems to develop their preferred post-acute networks. It's nice to be here.
Thank you, Karen. And then I'm not sure if Rob Rosen was able to attend today. Rob, are you in? And how about Susan? Were you able to attend? All right. Well, we did want to take a chance to introduce our team so you can see some of the diverse backgrounds and expertise that we have that will assist in this study to make sure that we can meet all the needs of the state as we take on this important work. Next slide, please. So now we're going to move into the objective of engagement and the study objectives, and I will turn it over to David to jump into the next slides.
Great. Thanks, Justin. One more thing I just wanted to point out, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Guidehouse name, Guidehouse is an international consulting firm that specializes in a whole range of services to clients. But in this particular instance, our expertise is in rate setting, strategic planning, and we have worked on a number of engagements throughout the country on nursing facility strategic planning, reimbursement, redevelopment, and the whole continuum of LTS services. So as an organization, we are very excited to be part of this and to looking forward to working with you. So that having been said, you know, in Michelle's opening comments, she really laid out why we're here, but it's bears repeating as to why, you know, this is why we're here and what we're doing. So Maine Care has engaged Guidehouse to help them reevaluate their reimbursement policy for both the nursing facilities and the residential care facilities. As you're probably aware, the intention of the department is to transition from the current cost settlement methodology to one that is based fully or in part on prospective payments by 1/1/25. Now, there are some key goals there. The important thing about the reimbursement model is it's consistent with efficiency, economy, equity, and it promotes quality of care, and most importantly, sufficient to ensure access to all members within Maine who need the type of services offered. And of course, we're dedicated to promoting the health, safety, and opportunity to all people in Maine on the continuum of LTSS services. Next slide, please. So here are a little bit of background facts. Many of you probably know a lot of this information, but a couple of key things here worth pointing out is today, 1 in 5 or 21% of Maine residents are 65 years or older. That number is predicted by 2030 to grow to 31% or 1 in 3. Part of what we're doing here is, and we'll get into that in a moment, is to talk about the current facilities and where they're going in the future. Today, there are 6,400 beds with an occupancy of 79% in the nursing facilities. In the residential care facilities, there's 4,400 beds with an 85% occupancy. Next slide. So what are the study objectives? And how are we going to go about doing it? Well, we're going to start by casting a wide net. We're going to look throughout the nation to find interesting and progressive programs that other states are doing to ensure high quality care to nursing facility and LTS individuals who are needing care. We'll bring what we find back to the state and to you all, and to present that as options for consideration to go forward. Of course, this process wouldn't be complete unless we engaged in a very comprehensive method to work with you all in the form of a series of work groups, and potentially we might even reach out to you via surveys or smaller work groups. One of the things that, as I mentioned a moment ago, we are going to be listening for and wanting to hear from you about quality and ensuring high quality care and the focus on the experience for individuals who are residents of these facilities. And then ultimately, all this is leading up to is we'll be making a recommendation and developing rates for an alternative payment methodology, which, as I said, is going to move from the current the current cost settlement methodology that you're all aware of to one that is based in part or fully on prospective payments. We'll be taking into consideration, as Michelle said, the administrative burden of said methodology and the fairness of said methodology. On a parallel track, simultaneously, we're also going to be doing a mapping and needs assessment. As I mentioned, the purpose of that is twofold. We want to understand where the LTS services are in the state of Maine, how many providers there are, and how that matches up with the demand and the access. We will be doing that on a county by county basis. Next slide. So how is this study going to work? One of the things we're going to do right off the bat is establish the cost of providing care in nursing facilities and residential care facilities. We want to explore opportunities also because none of this would be possible if the providers were not financially viable. So we'll be looking at that as well. And there's a number of factors that go into the cost, including occupancy and the cost of employees. So what can you do? So as I mentioned, we're going to be doing this statewide map, and we'll be looking to hear back from all the folks who are actually on the ground providing the care. We want to understand how different payment models may affect providers and residents. We also want to understand the programmatic reimbursement performance and fiscal goals of long-term services. And finally, we'll be refining our recommendations so we can actually deliver an improvement for nursing facilities and residential care facilities along that continuum of LTSS services within the state. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit more about this National Long-Term Care Program Scan. Next slide. As I mentioned a moment ago, our objective is to cast a wide net and see what other states are doing in terms of long-term services and supports. As I mentioned a moment ago, Guidehouse has been involved in with a number of states in this area. And so we're already aware of some of what's going on, but we want to be thorough and comprehensive, and we want to be able to bring back that information to you all and to Maine Care. Now, once we do that, what we want to do is we want to refine what we're looking at, because Maine is a unique state, and we want to make sure that models that we find nationally are appropriate for comparison to Maine. So we're going to be looking at population and enrollment size. We're going to be looking at geography, the funding mechanism that is currently in place in those states and how it aligns with the funding mechanism in Maine. Look at the service model. I know how those models account for things like quality and equity, and how they provide the necessary incentives to ensure those things. And we also want to look at that full continuum of services that under the broad heading of long-term services and supports. So with those criteria, we'll then select a series of states for Maine Care and the stakeholders to consider as the methodology for your next reimbursement system. Next slide. So let's take a look more at the long-term service and support mapping. One of the things we're going to be looking at in state is, as I mentioned, it's going to be a county by county assessment. We're going to look at utilization. We're going to look at the provider network that exists today. We're going to be looking at any gaps. Are there gaps both geographically and in the provision of services? Are there places where there's a need, where the need for service and the provision of service does not line up? And of course, we're going to be looking at quality. I think we all can agree that, the experience that residents have at a facility and then in the community is utmost on our list of priorities. Next slide. So I want to pause there for a moment. I know I've been talking for a couple of minutes here, and here, if anybody has some thoughts, here are some of the things that we're going to be, getting from you over the course of this engagement. But to the extent you all have thoughts now and want to share them, you can share them either via the chat, or you can raise your hand. I'll look to Justin to help call on folks. But if there are there things around policy objectives or current considerations that you want us to focus on, other design and operation components that you think are important, and are there gaps that come to mind right away that you say, hey, that's something I want the Guidehouse and Maine Care team to look at. So I'll just pause there, and don't feel that you have to. I just want to give folks an opportunity to raise their hand. And Justin, I'll let you call on folks and identify folks, and we'll take notes.
Looks like we do have one. Well, there went. Chat from Deborah asking, will Maine Care eligibility criteria be a component of comparison?
I'm just taking that down. So I would say is the eligibility, when you talk about eligibility, you're talking about eligibility not only for Maine Care, but eligibility to be in long-term services and supports. That is not specifically the topic of our engagement. We're going to be focusing on the provision of services across the continuum with the focus of doing rates for nursing facility and residential care facility. And we are, as opposed to looking at the criteria by which a individual becomes eligible for both Maine Care and then eligible for those services.
Just to make sure that we got your question correctly, Deborah, are you referring to criteria for NIFs versus RCFs and whether we'll be looking at that? And if not, could you say a little bit more about what you mean with your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. I asked the question only because we know that across the states, Maine Care eligibility is more stringent in the state of Maine in comparison. And as a result, the requirement for example, ADL assistance, et cetera, requires more resource. Therefore, the cost of providing that care is greater. And so making sure that, if you're looking at other programs across the state, if we pick one where eligibility is much lighter, those costs will not be an apple and an apple. Does that make sense?
It does. Thanks so much, Deborah, for clarifying. And we absolutely recognize and have had conversations about the higher eligibility criteria in the state of Maine. So yes, while we're looking at other states, we will certainly take that into consideration.
All right, we do have another one here from, and I apologize because it's just a shortened name, BUSMGR, who states, I would like to see Maine Care funds to not be taxed for the provider tax. I think that is more of a suggestion than a question, but if you did have additional items you'd like to add to that, please feel free to speak up. Otherwise, we will just note that down.
And Angela Westhoff, I think, has a question. Her hand's raised.
Okay,
Yeah,
Angela.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. And I just want to express our appreciation to the department and to the Guidehouse team for starting us off with a great stakeholder meeting. As CEO of the Maine Healthcare Association, we have a lot of thoughts, a lot of suggestions for the team. As you can imagine, Michelle is nodding because I think in the 18 months that I've sat in the seat, we've had this conversation over and over and over again. So it's with great enthusiasm that we look forward to participating in this rate study process. I think what I would just comment for the team right now, we're dealing with a structural shortfall in our system year over year over year. Even when we do rebasing every other year, there's just not enough funds. And when we talk with the department, we know that structurally there are cost caps in place. And so we'll never get to the point where all allowable costs are 100% covered in the current system. But certainly that's something that we would like to explore in terms of raising the median going forward, because as you all know, staffing is at a critical level and we don't see it improving anytime in the near future. So when we talk about short-term and long-term goals for this rate reform project, I think staffing has to be a key consideration, but also lagging reimbursement. Maine has done a great job trying to increase reimbursement for direct care workers and raising minimum wage, and we're fully supportive of that. But we just have to make sure that there's funds available in the rate to make sure that we can continue to sustain that and to keep these services available. Otherwise, we're going to have to we'll continue to see closures of facilities. So I just, at the risk of stating the obvious, wanted to put that out there. And I know I saw Wanda Pelkey had her hand raised earlier, and I think she can't raise her hand feature. So I would just, if the team would indulge, maybe she would like an opportunity to comment as well.
Sure.
Thanks, Angela. Yeah, I know Guidehouse folks are just getting going on this program, and I fully understand what you mean about analyzing some of the key demographics of Maine and comparing that nationwide to see what other states might be a good fit to model our system after. And I would just remind you to also look into the success of those programs for the other states with an eye towards if they're successful with the sustainability of the industry in those states, and to really set up a framework for what would guide our evaluation of a successful program, with an eye towards viability of facilities and providers on a sustainable basis, because costs do change over time. And as you all know, we have been in a climate now of very rapidly expanding costs due to workforce pressures and just general inflation in the economy. So I would just like to remind the group that that's very, very important to our industry. So thank you.
And before we get an additional comment, I just want to focus on what both Angela and Wanda said, because you both raised staffing, and I can just tell you, you're not alone. In other words, in our experience nationwide, staffing is a tremendous pressure point, whether it be the availability of staffing, the cost of staffing, the need to hire temporary or contract workers. And so one of the things we're going to be looking at is not just sort of methodologies of reimbursement, but what some states are doing in an innovative way around staffing. In particular, one state we're familiar with is Illinois, they've done some interesting things in trying to incent staffing and incent folks to come in. Other states we've looked at is especially when you're talking about CNAs, who, as we all know, are the backbone of the industry, the methodology to actually so to speak, grow your own, encourage the development and the training of individuals to bring them in from other careers and make them aware of the great opportunity that is available in a nursing facility and teach them. So, I just want to point out that we're very acutely aware of that issue. And so we look forward to working with you all on the whole range of issues that affect your programs. But in particular, we are very sensitive to the current staffing issue. Justin.
All right, David, we have a couple more in the chat. Kristen Overton, she asks, can you provide a definition of what populations are considered LTSS? And is this LTSS assessment for section 67 and 97C only?
I can take that. So part of this is terminology, and typically when we use the term long-term care, we're talking about facility-based care, and a key part of this project is rate reform for PNMICs and nursing homes. When we use LTSS in these slides and going forward, it's pretty deliberate, and it's meant to suggest the larger system that includes residential, but also includes in-home services, independent living with services, an entire range. So the assessment of the system will cover that entire range. The rate setting portion of this project is focused on PNMICs and nursing facilities.
Thank you, Paul. And then I think we have one more here from Julie Feld. Will you be looking at efficiency, and states that there are delays with MACs and processing applications, for example?
Yeah, I can take that as well. So I'm assuming, Julie, that by MACs you're referring to Maximus, which is the assessing agency. Let us know if you about those delays that you're experiencing, because we at ODES, we do oversee that contractor. I think it's certainly fair to look at efficiency as part of this to the extent that that impacts sustainability of the providers.
All right, and I think that is all the comments in the chat. Not sure if I see any other hands up. David, we could probably move to the next question.
So I think, if you want to move to the next slide, if there's any other questions here. And Paul, did you want to say anything further? I know you had a few statement you wanted to make generally regarding.
Yeah, thank you, David. I did want to talk a little bit about, why the broader assessment in the context of this program, of this project. Sustainable living is really emerging as a theme in the general long-term services and supports reform work that we're doing. The Cabinet on Aging in its listening sessions last year heard this theme over and over again. So whether it's that, you are able to stay in your own home, except that you need some services in order to do that, and those services are not available, or your needs have progressed to the point where you need residential care, and unfortunately you have to move from northern Maine to southern Maine in order to get it because that's not available near your community. So when we talk about sustainable living, we really mean a whole range of supports that enable older adults to continue living in or near the communities that they prefer. Not always possible, but that's a goal, is to be able to do that. And for that to be something that can happen statewide. The availability of residential care in nursing homes is certainly part of that. And we need to look at the range of in-home supports that can prevent or delay the need for those more intensive service options. So when we think about how many nursing home beds we need in Maine, for instance, we also have to think about what our in-home capacity is to serve people, because those two things really impact and affect one another. And we want a balanced system that includes the entire range so that people can have choices in the types of supports and services they need. And as they need more intensive care, they can progress through a system if that becomes necessary. We know anecdotally that availability of supports is uneven across the state, and it contributes to inequities. One of the big inequities that we know exists in Maine is rural versus urban, excuse me. But at a more precise level, the capacity of our system has not been measured in many years. And so a portion of this project around assessing system capacity by county is an important baseline activity for us and for all of you as we figure out together where the gaps are and what needs to be filled in county by county as we go forward. We will need your help to do this. And so, this is a kickoff meeting. OMS made a public announcement about it, and we're glad to see so many people here. Going forward, we expect to do more focused work with many of you, and we'll certainly be reaching out. We think some of you might be interested specifically in helping with the assessment part of this project, which is broader in its scope. And then, of course, those of you who provide nursing home and P&MI services will obviously be involved and interested in the rate setting portion of the work. So we see having opportunities for at least two groups to convene around this work as we go forward. And certainly we expect there'll be overlap between those groups. But I want to thank you for being here and for being interested in this work. It's something that we're all very interested in, as is the Cabinet on Aging. And so thanks.
All right, and we did get an additional question from Glenn. Glenn asks, will there be proposals as part of this review to limit and put in measures to stop, limit, or eliminate the ongoing financial abuse of temporary nursing agencies and companies who are charging over market rates and forcing our industry to the brink of collapse?
So, I mean, I think that Guidehouse team, I think that we would certainly be interested in what you see in other states in terms of any kind of public policy around temp staffing. I think that's what Glenn's getting at here. You know, have there been successful policy options implemented in other states, or as in Maine, is it essentially, you know, what the market will bear, which, as we all know, became pretty high, significant cost during COVID.
Right. So it'll definitely be something that we will be looking into and considering as part of the analysis. All right, I don't see any additional questions. Don't see any hands up. All right, so last thing we want to do today was kind of get into the engagement timeline to give you an idea of the timing of this work. If you could go back a slide, please. Nope, I think we're missing a slide. Okay, next slide. So we broke this out into the high level tasks that are going to go on here. Today is kind of our kickoff for the project. We have been doing some work behind the scenes, but today is kind of the first day of the work. And it will wrap up in November of 2023. And we broke it out into kind of phase 1, which is the rate setting reform, and phase B, phase A, the rate setting reform, and phase B, which is more of the mapping and needs assessment. So we, at the high level steps here, we looked at phase A1, which is stakeholder engagement, which has the entire time period will be involved, because we'll be having meetings and looking for information from you and providing information back to you and getting edits and comments, and want to make sure the stakeholders are involved throughout this entire process. The national scan that was spoke on earlier is beginning now, and we will have that wrapped up in April. The utilization analysis is in the same time period, beginning now and wrapped up by April. We will develop an APM option and present it to the public, and that will be done in May of 23, but then it'll be kind of ongoing with feedback and changes and new suggestions, so it kind of goes on throughout the rest of the project. At the point that we do have the options for rate setting that we would like to model out and move forward with, we will start the rate setting process in May, and the goal to finish that in September with kind of first drafts to discuss with the state, and then public presentation of those rates in October for final rates due, I believe it is November 18th or 19th for final rates to be signed off on. And then we'll also be assisting in the SPA development and the CMS compliance after the rates are completed. Next slide, please. And then phase B, as I said, is the mapping and needs assessment. Again, the National Environmental Scan will go hand in hand with this, which will be February to April. Looking at the Maine current and future LTSS needs will be an ongoing process again, as we'll be holding meetings and gathering feedback throughout the process. But the goal is to start that now with a finishing date in July. Prepare an analysis of the report of the needs assessment. We'll go July through September or October to finalize that after several revisions and drafts. We included the stakeholder meetings, much like today, at random times, roughly the goal of one every 2 months, but these are yet to be determined. So we, for now, have just filled in roughly once every 2 months, and then provide ongoing department support throughout the project. And each time we meet and have a new meeting, we'll kind of update our status on where we are with each of these steps and show what we've accomplished and where we are within that program. Next slide. And to open up, if there's any additional questions or comments. Oh, I see a chat. Israel, given Glenn is 100% on point on this. Caps are not instituted, will absolutely lead to further facility closures. This is the #1 issue that needs to be addressed. Other states have instituted legislation on the issue. We also need to streamline our ability to bring in nurses from overseas who are ready and willing to provide relief for our workforce challenges. Thank you for that comment. We will make note of that. Comment from David Dill. NSF and RCF, while similar, there are many differences. While there be separate? Will there be separate tracks, or is the intent to look at these as one project? Standards and funding are very different.
So, well, I guess I'll take that. And while they are in fact separate types of facilities, they will be part of this overall engagement in particular, because those are the two provider types that Maine Care has identified and asked Guidehouse to develop a new APM for. So we say them in one breath, but we recognize they are in fact two types of facilities, and they'll be treated as such.
Brenda, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you so much. So from the perspective of an advocate for long-term care consumers, we're really excited to see this. For a long time, we've needed a comprehensive plan that considers rural areas as well as urban. And I would just suggest that we make sure that we have input from the individuals that need these services. So in long-term care facilities, there could be surveys done of residents. I think that will be really important. What is their perception of quality care? What do they think? What changes need to be made? So it's really important to get that perspective of the individuals that need the services. And this is, I think this has been needed for so long. So we really appreciate it.
Great, thanks for that.
And I think there's one more chat question. What safety nets will be in place to support providers who are somehow not the average?
I'm sorry?
What safety nets will be in place to support providers who are somehow not the average? I'm not sure if this is referring to from a rate perspective or.
I think I can speak to that, Wanda. We don't have a proposed methodology at this point. And so this process is meant to get us to a proposed methodology and have collaboration and conversation. So to your point, we know that there are a lot of different important factors in terms of ensuring access and patient needs, not all of which might always be captured through a case mix process. And so that's going to be part of the discussion, but we don't come to you today with a fully at all baked proposal of what it's going to look like. And so it's going to be a process to get to that answer.
And I just want to second what Michelle said is, while we're aware of a whole range of methodologies to reimburse providers of this type, and we will be gathering more information from our national scan, we have no preconceived idea, and it's really going to be the input we receive from you that will help guide the options that we present to Maine Care, so Maine Care can make a decision based on what's best for Maine, the providers, the residents of the facilities.
All right, any additional questions or comments for today? I'm not seeing any, so we'll keep federal proposals on min staffing on radar. All right, we will note that. We will provide, if you have questions you come up with after you get a chance to review the slides yourselves, do you have additional questions? We will provide an email address for you to send those questions in the email that goes out with the presentation itself. So you're certainly free to submit additional questions as they come along. Last slide is just the contacts from the Guidehouse team, who's introduced before, but Tamara Porter is the partner, and we give her email address and phone number. David, the director, and then myself, the associate director, who's the project manager. So I know we are only an hour in, and this is scheduled for 2.5 hours. But if folks don't have additional questions or comments, we can maybe give everybody some of their day back, but happy to take any more questions you have.
And I would just add one more thing is you can look forward to hearing from us in a not too distant future on sort of the plan for that stakeholder engagement and how we will develop groups and, be reaching back out to folks to directly engage with you I think it's important not only to have a broad-based group, but there may be topics that only certain individuals are interested in. So we'll take advantage of that and make best use of your time and your interest and your knowledge. So look forward to that.
All right, any other questions? Hands up.
I think I apologize if someone did answer this and I missed it, but there was a question in the chat asking, noting that there are similarities as well as differences between nursing facilities and res care facilities, and will there be separate tracks? And so I can answer that for the rate reform piece of this work. We absolutely recognize that there may well need to continue to be two separate reimbursement methodologies. I think that we're interested in aligning those methodologies where it makes sense, but are open to the fact that there might be places where it doesn't make sense. So the theme to my answers this morning is that we're trying to be open-minded and flexible at this point, but recognize that they are not the same models.
Thank you, Michelle.
I'm
right.
sorry,
Well,
could I just ask a clarifying question? Thank you. David, I think you said to stay tuned for an email about the various groups, the work groups that are going to be formed. Will that be coming from you or from the department, or who should we be looking for an email from?
That's to be decided, but I mean, I would say, I would characterize it as communication, right? In other words, I wouldn't say, you won't see an email today, but in other words, we will be in short order be getting back to this group, not only looking for your level of interest in participation in specific areas, but sort of letting you know a little bit more the next steps in terms of stakeholder engagement. As Justin said, when he walked through the timeline, right now we just have placeholders for meetings, and to some degree, while we want to schedule those meetings out in advance because we're respectful of people's time and the ability to get it, we also want to make those meetings to be most effective and fit in with the process, right? So I think we look to the stakeholders as our partners in this process, and so we will be getting back to you not only on topics but also on scheduling. So so look for that, and so it will come from either us or from Maine Care.
Excellent.
And it very well may come from me, Angela. And if you have any questions again about the process or who to contact, or you felt like you haven't heard and you should have heard something, feel free to reach out to me.
Will do. Thanks, Brian.
No problem.
Yeah, and if everyone wants to know, Brian did put a note in the chat to reach out to him with additional questions, and then provided his email address there as well. So, all right. Last questions, going once, going twice, 3 times. All right, Brian, I think unless you have other things that we need to cover, I think we can end today's call.
Yeah, it looks like, and I appreciate the participation. And again, this is a collaborative undertaking. So again, at any time, if you have any thoughts, feel free to reach out to us with any additional questions or concerns. And we look forward to the process. So with that, you get a whole bunch of your day back.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone,
Thank
for
you so much.
attending.
I appreciate it.
Look forward to working with you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
That look like fun? What is that?